Lesson 6. Recognizing leverage points in the system. In this lesson, we'll explore the idea of understanding areas of leverage and what leverage are. We'll also discuss where we can find these leverages in your system. One of the major reference for this lesson is the concept proposed by Donella Meadows on places to intervene. In practicing systems thinking, it is important for us to understand where best to introduce interventions. By understanding these areas of interventions, we can best find the most effective way to improve or influence the behavior of your system. Archimedes once said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." This saying demonstrates the idea of leverage and how leverage is an important way to move difficult things. What is leverage? Leverage is the ability to influence situations or people or the system so that you can control what will happen. It is a force that you apply to an object when you use something as a lever so that you can push and move the object. In systems thinking, we now adopt the concept of a leverage point. What is a leverage point? A leverage point is where you position the fulcrum in order to create the most impact to the change. What we're after is to find small actions that can hopefully yield large results. A leverage point is a place in the system where you apply enough force to create the necessary movement to make the entire system shift its behavior. When leverage is applied properly, leverage can produce results more than typical, obvious answers that we apply in any of our problems. When we recognize the leverage point in the system, we are able to unlock results beyond just pouring resources. An example here would be if we can somehow reduce the effort of each customer, that's gonna unlock the growth of our organization more than putting more resources to help our customers exert more effort in their journey during their experiences in our product. To apply the concept of leverage, we now connect what we have learned in our previous lessons regarding stocks and flows. By connecting our knowledge on stock and flows, we now use this knowledge to pinpoint leverage points in our system. Borrowing our causal loop diagrams and the knowledge of stock and flows, we can now assume that these areas in our flows or our rates are opportunities by which we can influence the behavior of the system. These areas are opportunities or targets for possible interventions. Donella Meadows is one of the most well-renowned contributors to systems thinking. She actually coined and created the concepts of places to intervene in our systems. According to Donella Meadows, leverage points are places in our systems where a small shift in one thing can produce big changes in everything. Leverage points are like acupuncture points, meaning focused, tuned-in strategic interventions. Strike in a way that's going to create lasting change, but also create a ripple effect. Leverage points are also representative opportunities where participants can have greater impact by working together than by working alone. Let's recall the iceberg model. Remember, the iceberg model represents how we might view our systems. The one on top at the iceberg represents events that are easily seen, while the ones at the bottom represents the behavior, the structure, and the mental models that drives the structure. When we now apply interventions in our systems, we now look at 4 general interventions that we can do in order to move the system from its inertia, from its state of non-movement. We apply 4 general thoughts. These are the materials, where we offer rewards or change the flow. We look at processes, where we try to change feedback. Or we can change the design or the structure by changing the goals and how information flows. And finally, the intent, which covers the mindset and paradigm of the system. Interventions, taking the cue on material, focuses on aligning rewards and material flows. This can be in terms of adding constraints, changing the flow or the rates, or increasing the size of our buffer or our levels. These are simple ways by which we can create change, but oftentimes are costly. An example of a policy aligned towards material would be an electronic road pricing policy applied in Singapore, where they manage to control the flow of the traffic in order to limit the build-up in the city at certain times of the day. The second type of intervention are process interventions. These are interventions focusing on how we can change feedback or flows of information. Oftentimes, this can be in the form of modifying positive and negative feedback loops so that information becomes available to the hands of the decision maker. Furthermore, we can also tackle reducing the delay by which information arrives at the decision maker in order for the decision maker to be able to make decisions faster and better at that moment. A good example of this would be real-time traffic information in Waze or Google Maps that can direct the decisions of the drivers to move to areas and roads that have less traffic. The third type of intervention are the design interventions. These cover redefining the goals, the information itself that flows from one entity or the other in the organization, or shifting the organization to a self-organizing structure. This can be in the form of changing the rules on how the system is governed by decentralizing control or enhancing the organization of the system, creating self-functioning teams, or creating shared goals of the system that can align the performance of your teams. A good example would be establishing agile teams in an organization that are self-directed, self-organizing, and working for an overall interest of the organization's customer. The last type of intervention, and also the most challenging and requires a more patient approach, is intent. This covers changing the mindset and paradigms of the system, including its people and players. This can be in the form of modifying the belief on how the system performs, how it guides the behavior. This can be done by influencing the views of the people in the organization and creating a movement. It can also be in the form of expanding the system's ability to go beyond paradigms and biases, which is difficult and extremely challenging for many organizations to do. They can open the diversity of views or perspectives in the hope of creating new ideas from this collaboration. By creating a reality that makes everyone act together, the best interest of others would mean that we will have a better place to live in. Using these intervention areas, Donella Meadows has broken down these concepts into 12 leverage points in order of increasing effectiveness, which means that we can start with the first concept, which is numbers, going through buffers, stock and flows, delays, focusing on the balancing loop, reinforcing the loop, looking at information, changing the rules, changing the organization, changing the goals, shifting the paradigm, and going above paradigms. These are the general key concepts of Donella Meadows in trying to now influence or change the behavior of the system by intervening on our leverage points. When applying these leverage points, we take note that the first 6 leverage points are oftentimes designed by many people and are often being used. This requires resources and can often be done quickly, however, would be costly. The second 6 leverage points require less resources in terms of physical, but takes longer, but creates a more lasting effect on the system. As a final thought, we cannot control the systems we are in or figure them out, but we can learn to dance with them. By learning to dance with the system, we take advantage of how we can influence and target certain behaviors in order the system to behave accordingly. The key message in Lesson 6 are as follows. Leverage is about finding the most impactful change with the least effort. Applying leverage points in areas in our system means that we can pursue interventions such as policies and structural changes that are needed to influence the behavior of the system. And finally, the 12 leverage points can act as a quick guide on possible interventions that we may explore and mind the trade-offs of impact and efforts needed to make the change.